A 30-year-old man has been shot dead in the Gateway shopping mall in Mhlanga near Durban. It's believed that he was a drug lord and minibus taxi and tow truck owner from Phoenix, north of Durban. He was gunned down by an unknown assailant in the mall's parking area. Police spokesperson Ngobile Ngwala has appealed to community members to help with information which can lead to the arrest of the perpetrators.
On the morning of the 6th of June 2019, the car park of the Gateway Theatre of Shopping in Mhlanga, one of KwaZulu-Natal's busiest shopping centers, suddenly turned into a scene of chaos. Gunfire rang out, bouncing off concrete walls and sending shoppers running in panic. In the middle of that scene, next to a white BMW, Calvin Periasamy, the notorious boss of the Bloods gang in Phoenix, collapsed motionless, blood from wounds on his head and chest staining the cement floor. The man who once ran a powerful taxi and rescue service empire that put rivals on guard ended his life in seconds. Why would a notorious kingpin like Calvin Periasamy, who controlled a network of taxis, rescue services, and underground power in Phoenix, be taken down in broad daylight in a crowded place? Was this just a bloody revenge in the criminal world? Or was it the result of a pre-planned conspiracy, with those behind it still hiding in the shadows? Let's dig into every detail, following the trail of this shocking assassination. Calvin Periasamy was born and raised in Phoenix, a residential area located north of Durban in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. Phoenix is known for its high crime and violence rates, especially the presence of local gangs fighting for territory and interest in underground businesses such as minibus taxis, drug trafficking, and car towing services. Phoenix is known for its high crime and violence rates, especially the presence of local gangs fighting for territory and interest in underground businesses such as minibus taxis, drug trafficking, and car towing services. From a young age, Calvin was said to have demonstrated leadership and organizational skills. Those who knew him described Calvin as decisive, ambitious, and willing to take advantage of opportunities to advance. Calvin's understanding of how local transport services operate, especially the minibus taxi sector, which is heavily influenced by interest groups, has helped him gradually build strategic relationships. According to multiple South African press sources, Calvin gradually became a well-known figure in the region thanks to his ability to control and coordinate taxi operations in Phoenix, while expanding into the field of vehicle rescue services. In the eyes of some locals, he appears as a successful businessman, but to the authorities, Calvin is an important link in the Bloods gang network, a criminal group believed to be involved in many illegal activities. Growing up in an environment rife with violence and power struggles shaped the path Calvin chose, taking him from an ambitious young man to a notorious mob boss in Phoenix. Calvin Periasamy began his career in the underworld through connections in the minibus taxi industry, a sector rife with competition and conflict in KwaZulu-Natal. South Africa's taxi industry has long been dominated by vested interests and gangs, with fights over parking lots, routes, and toll collection rights often leading to violence. Calvin, with his keen sense and understanding of how the system worked, quickly found ways to connect with prominent figures in the industry, including veteran drivers and taxi bosses, tycoons who controlled the network of vehicles and drivers. Through these connections, Calvin gradually expanded his sphere of influence, not only in Phoenix but also in the surrounding areas of North Durban. In the process, he approached and cooperated with key members of the Bloods gang, a notorious criminal group in the area. This relationship not only provides personal security protection, but also gives Calvin an additional shield to expand his underground business without being easily attacked by competitors. Alongside the taxi business, Calvin has invested in tow truck services, a highly profitable sector in South Africa where towing companies often compete fiercely for the right to handle accidents or roadside breakdowns. It is also an industry that is often accused of using intimidation and violence to eliminate competitors. Calvin's deep involvement in the tow truck industry allows him to both expand his legitimate revenue streams and leverage his network of connections to support less legitimate operations. In addition, local press has repeatedly mentioned Calvin's suspected involvement in drug trafficking, a huge source of income for gangs in Durban. Although there were no specific convictions at the initial stage, raids and arrests in the Phoenix area repeatedly turned up large quantities of drugs, and Calvin's name frequently appeared in investigative reports. The combination of taxi, tow truck, and drug dealings provided a springboard for Calvin to build his reputation. In the eyes of those in the industry, he was a big shot who knew how to use every resource to consolidate his power. It was this foundation that transformed Calvin from a middleman to a key figure in the Phoenix criminal network. Entering the stage of stabilizing power, Calvin Periasamy began to expand his activities on many fronts. The minibus taxi industry remains a mainstay, providing both a steady income and a sense of community. In KwaZulu-Natal, control of taxi routes means control over a part of the lives of thousands of commuters. Calvin used this advantage to consolidate his position, ensuring that key terminals and routes were under his control or those of loyalists in the network. In parallel, tow truck service has become another source of income, not only legal in form, but also providing opportunities to trade with many partners and agencies. The tow truck industry in South Africa is notoriously cutthroat, with many companies competing at every cost to handle accidents. Calvin's ability to stay afloat and expand his fleet shows that he relies not only on gang power, but also on his connections to maintain his market share. According to numerous articles and investigative reports, Calvin's network was also involved in drug distribution, a lucrative but high-risk business. These activities are believed to have spread from Phoenix to neighboring areas north of Durban. The drugs were distributed through multiple intermediaries, making it difficult to trace them directly to Calvin. However, police have repeatedly raided and seized large quantities of illegal substances during anti-drug operations in areas controlled by the Bloods gang. On the surface, Calvin tries to project an image of a successful businessman. He sponsors several community events, appears at local gatherings, and maintains a wide social circle. These actions both help to reinforce his legitimate image and create loyalty from a segment of the population who benefit from the financial support or job opportunities he provides. Behind the businessman's facade, however, lies an organized crime network that operates on loyalty, fear, and financial gain. Phoenix is the central base, but Calvin's influence extends to many other parts of Durban. With the backing of the Bloods gang, he maintained control not only through money, but also through violence, ensuring that every operation, from taxis and tow trucks to drug trafficking, was within his grasp. Through a combination of street power, diversified revenue streams, and a deft image strategy, Calvin transformed himself from an underground player into a bona fide kingpin, making rivals and outsiders wary. During his consolidation of power, Calvin Periasamy was known to use violence and intimidation to protect his interests. In the minibus taxi industry in KwaZulu-Natal, conflicts between groups often broke out over disputes over routes or parking lots. According to local press sources, Calvin and his network have repeatedly engaged in confrontations aimed at forcing opponents to retreat or accept conditions imposed by him. Having a loyal force of hands and feet ready to act when needed helps him maintain control of strategic points in Phoenix and surrounding areas. Not only in the taxi industry, the tow truck sector that Calvin operates is also a fiercely competitive environment, where companies often use all means to gain the right to rescue at accidents. There are allegations that some business rivals were threatened or hindered in their operations when they tried to enter Calvin's sphere of influence. Collisions, vandalism of vehicles, or direct threats against rival employees are not uncommon in this setting, and Calvin is alleged to have exploited that violent environment to maintain an advantage. Additionally, within local crime circles, the Bloods gang, of which Calvin is considered the leader in Phoenix, is notorious for using violence as a tool to settle disputes and send messages to opposing factions. With this backing, Calvin was virtually untouchable for many years. There were rumors reported in the press that Calvin maintained secret relationships with several individuals within the local police force. Although there is no public legal evidence to confirm this, many believe that this is the factor that helps him avoid serious penalties and continue to operate despite investigations. The fact that important information or evidence failed to reach prosecutors or that raids did not yield results further reinforced suspicions about Calvin's behind-the-scenes influence. Through a combination of violence, intimidation, and alleged insider connections, Calvin maintained the scale of his operations for many years. The empire spanned not only taxi and tow truck operations, but also drug trafficking and other underground revenue streams, making him one of the most powerful figures in the Phoenix crime scene. The turning point that led to Calvin Periasamy's downfall came when his name was increasingly associated with serious allegations of organized crime activities. Multiple reports and news outlets in South Africa said that Calvin was being monitored by authorities for his suspected involvement in large-scale drug possession and trafficking in Phoenix and surrounding areas. Raids in the years leading up to the assassination had yielded large quantities of drugs, and while Calvin was not always arrested on the spot, his name repeatedly appeared in the investigative files. In addition to drugs, Calvin is also suspected of being involved in a number of murders in KwaZulu-Natal. believed to stem from feuds between criminal groups in the taxi and car towing services industries. His victims were often competitors or people who threatened the interests of the network Calvin controlled. Although he has not been convicted, the suspicions have made him a target for police and rivals. Pressure from both the law enforcement and the criminal world is mounting. The close scrutiny makes it harder for Calvin to keep his activities secret, while allies may also see him as a liability. In the underworld, a boss who is too much in the spotlight can easily become a delicious prey for both enemies and those who want to seize power. Calvin's fatal mistake was to continue to openly display his power in public. On the morning of June 6th, the weather in Mpumalanga, Durban is quite pleasant. The Gateway Theater of Shopping, commonly known as Gateway Mall, is bustling with shoppers, employees, and gym-goers. Around that time, Calvin Periasamy was at the Virgin Active Gym inside the mall. It was part of his daily routine and also a crowded, easily accessible public space. According to witnesses, sometime after finishing his workout, Calvin left the gym, put on his sportswear, took his personal belongings, and headed to the parking lot. The area has a lot of traffic, but is ideal for an ambush because visibility is obscured by rows of cars and concrete pillars. As Calvin approached his white BMW, a group of gunmen appeared from the direction near the exit of the parking lot. Without any warning or argument, they immediately opened fire. According to sources at the scene, multiple shots were fired directly into Calvin's head and chest, a cold execution often used in gangland killings to ensure the target would not survive. Gunfire echoed throughout the parking lot, causing panicked onlookers to run for cover. A haunting detail is that the two men believed to be the perpetrators after killing Calvin fired several shots into the air as an act of celebration or to send a message of intimidation. They then quickly fled the scene in a waiting vehicle. The entire process took place in a very short time, only a few dozen seconds, but was enough to create a chaotic and terrifying scene. Immediately after the shooting, residents and mall employees immediately called the police. Gateway Mall security forces attempted to block off the parking lot to preserve the scene for investigators. When police and paramedics arrived, Calvin Periasamy died at the scene from his fatal injuries. News of the assassination quickly spread on social media and local newspapers. Photos from the scene showed Calvin's body lying next to the BMW, surrounded by bullet casings and bloodstains on the cement floor. The audacity of the attack, carried out in broad daylight in one of the province's largest shopping malls, shocked the public. The murder was said to have been carefully planned from the timing of Calvin's arrival, the location of the ambush, to the manner of execution and retreat. Although no arrests were immediately made, police determined that it was a targeted killing, likely linked to conflict within KwaZulu-Natal's organized crime community. The death of Calvin Periasamy has created a major power vacuum in the Bloods gang network in Phoenix. Shortly after the assassination, factions within the gang began fighting for control of lucrative operations, particularly the minibus taxi and car recovery services that Calvin had controlled. This imbalance has left Phoenix in a precarious security situation, with the risk of violence rising as rival groups seek to seize territory. Taxi and tow truck businesses linked to Calvin quickly came under the radar of authorities, with raids conducted to look for evidence of illegal activities ranging from business fraud to drug trafficking. This not only disrupts the revenue streams of these businesses, but also leaves operators and employees feeling insecure, fearing they will become the next target of both the police and their enemies. The Calvin family also faced huge public pressure. The public downfall of many others saw it as an inevitable end. Some expressed grief. Character accused of being involved in crime. The media and public attention turned his family's private life upside down. On the police side, KwaZulu-Natal police have stepped up raids to crack down on gang activity in the area. The goal is both to find the perpetrators and to prevent further violence from erupting in the power vacuum left by Calvin's death. To date, no suspects have been formally brought to trial in the assassination of Calvin Periasamy. Although KwaZulu-Natal police have conducted numerous investigations, collected witness statements, and reviewed security camera footage around the Gateway Mall area, no breakthrough has been made sufficient to bring charges in court. The case is classified as one of KwaZulu-Natal's most famous unsolved murders, along with several other assassinations linked to organized crime and the taxi industry in South Africa. Crime experts say the silence of witnesses and the complex nature of gang networks have made the investigation difficult. In the underworld, finding the mastermind behind a crime is often more difficult than determining who actually fired the shot. There are also suspicions that the case involved an organized, possibly well-planned conspiracy involving multiple individuals both in and outside the Phoenix area. However, to date, these theories have not been confirmed by concrete evidence. More than 4 years after the incident, the Calvin Periasamy case file remains open, awaiting a new step in the investigation that could bring the perpetrator to justice. Despite his position of power, his underground business network, and the fear of many, Calvin Periasamy could not escape the spiral of violence that characterizes the South African criminal world. The assassination in broad daylight at a major shopping mall is clear evidence that money and power cannot shield him from the bullets of his enemies. Calvin's story reflects a harsh reality. In the underworld, relationships are fragile, and your standing today can be ruined in an instant. No matter how influential you are, there are always people waiting to take your place. What do you think about this case? If you find the story interesting, leave a comment below and follow us to continue to discover new cases.